Welcome to the NC3T webinar, the Introduction to High Quality Work-Based Learning. This is a webinar being put on behalf of the Pennsylvania Department of Education's Bureau of Career and Technical Education by the National Center for College and Career Transitions. Your hosts are Brett Pawlowski and Joann Hudak of NC3T. Next slide. Just a brief word about the National Center for College and Career Transitions. We're an organization with a twofold vision. Every learner with a dream and a plan, and every community with a capable, ready workforce. And the way that that plays out in the work that we do, we focus quite a bit on connecting youth to employment opportunities, a very strong focus on career-connected learning, which takes place not only through employer engagement, but also through college career pathway systems and supporting strong and sustainable career and technical education in middle schools, high schools, and post-secondary institutions in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. Next slide. I'll introduce myself. I am Brett Pawlowski. I'm the co-founder and executive vice president of NC3T. I'm a partnership guy. I've been working for about 20 years on employer engagement. Not only have I worked with businesses and the state departments of education and individual schools and districts for quite a while on this issue, I've also written quite a bit, including co-authoring Building Advisory Boards That Matter, which is available from ACTE. It's a book I co-authored with Hans Meter, and I'm the lead author of the Employer Engagement Toolkit. So partnerships are something that I believe in strongly. I think that outcomes you can get from engaging employers in education are tremendous, not only for employers, but for students as well as for the teachers in the institutions that host them. So I'll ask my co-presenter, Joann Hudak, to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Joann Hudak, and I am currently working with NC3T in a number of endeavors. Obviously, the work-based learning workshops, some career pathway leadership forums, and also we are developing a Pennsylvania-inspired Leadership Act 45 course, Career Readiness Foundations for School Leaders. I'm recently retired as a district administrator in Northeast PA. I have a pretty strong background in workforce and economic development issues, chairing the Wayne Pike Workforce Alliance, and I've worked extensively with school districts across Northeast PA on career-connected learning and K-12 guidance plans, career and technical ed, etc. So today, our program will focus on the why of work-based learning. Why is this an important topic today and in the future? A little bit about the PA Career Readiness and Future Ready PA Index, which many schools are working on right now, as this is the first year for implementation. An introduction to work-based learning, who benefits, and then we have some really tremendous resources and contact information for you. When we look at the college career equation at most schools, what we've traditionally seen for decades is most kids, young folks, pick a college, maybe where their parent went, their friend went, their favorite football team, but they generally pick a college. Then they look at focusing on a major once they get there, and then after college try to figure it all out. And it's in an equation that is not working. We have many students who are disengaged, students with a lot of debt and some college. So we're really trying to rethink this whole notion of the college career equation. The results of what we've been doing for decades is we have a tremendous number of disconnected youth. Recent studies indicate that about 5.5 million youth, and again, maybe that 18 to 34-year-olds are not working and not going to school. And, the hard cost to our national economy is around $26.8 billion. So that's really an eye-opener when you think about the importance of what we're doing today. Also, our post-secondary non-completers, the mindset for many schools and also community is everyone's going to college, kind of that college for all mindset. And the result is about 66% of the kids, students nationally enroll in some kind of post-secondary institution, and only about 41% complete. And very often that completion rate can take many more years than 4 for a traditional baccalaureate degree. So what we would propose, the new career post-secondary match equation is students would be developing a career interest, again, through work-based learning, through career inventories, all kinds of good experiences. Then find a related major or program that relates to their career interest. And then find the post-secondary match, whether that's a certification program, a 2-year or 4-year program. It's very different from the pick a college, find your major. The result from this new equation would be students would be entering post-secondary experiences with a true plan. Then they enter their first career path, and what's really most important that we have to teach our students today is how to navigate once they are completing their education and training and navigating their first and subsequent careers. Pennsylvania has really done a lot of work on college and career readiness. They've created a definition for their vision of college and career readiness students. And Pennsylvania learners will be prepared for meaningful engagement in post-secondary education, in workforce training, in career pathways, and as responsible and involved citizens. Pennsylvania also has state standards and mandates directly related to career readiness. The first is what we call our Chapter 339 or K-12 guidance plan. And the 339 plan, again, should be developed comprehensively within the school, looking at kindergarten through 12th grade sequential program of guidance services. And not only guidance services, but the majority of educators are responsible for this also. And that plan should be shared with their local career and technical center, and it should be a living document. It should be something that is kept up to date, and a part of it is the advisory councils that are required to be developed once you have your 339 plan. School districts are required to have an advisory council comprised of business and industry partners, nonprofits, teachers, students, parents, who meet twice a year to provide input and suggestions for improving student career-connected learning and career readiness experiences. Chapter 12, again, is pretty clear to most people that each school entity shall have their written student services plan, the counseling component, and again, linked to its academic standards. Now, the academic standards for career education and work have been mandated since 2006, and they are very, very important. And around the Commonwealth, what we see very often is that they are done kind of piecemeal, or that someone might have a very strong high school program, but maybe not the kindergarten program. So it's really important to know that these are K-12 standards for career education and work, and they address 4 strands: career awareness and planning, where the students are discovering themselves, that career acquisition, getting a job, career retention, keeping that job, as we said previously, navigating, and entrepreneurship, creating that job. So those are the 4 strands of our career education work standards. More recently, and Pennsylvania is the first state in the country to require career-based indicators as part of their ESSA plan. And here we have our Future Ready PA indicators, but what we're focusing on in this workshop and subsequent workshops are just the work-based learning experiences. And this is important because if we ask 10 people in a room to define a work-based learning experiences, we may have 10 different definitions. So it's important to recognize what it is, how to do it, and how to make sure that you really have a successful program for our kids. So when we look at what is work-based learning, we're really looking at 2 sides of it. What is effective work-based learning and ineffective work-based learning? So if we look at the column on the left, you can see that an effective work-based learning experience really builds on classroom instruction, and it's performed in partnership with local businesses, industries, or other organizations. and it's enhancing student knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and the students are participating in a supervised experience. Follows a pre-approved training plan, aligns to the student career goals, and if it is a career and technical center or a co-op program overseen by a certified cooperative education teacher. What we see on the other side in the right-hand column, the ineffective work-based learning, is randomly assigned with little or no connection to classroom instruction, some student-generated experience without establishment of partners, and there you might see a student who says, I'd like to job shadow the local veterinarian, ask permission to be excused from school, and without any real connection to that student's career plan. And work-based learning experiences without follow-up and evaluation by both the employer and teacher. And unrecorded, if we think back to the previous slide about the Future Ready PA Index, moving forward at the different bands, school districts will have to report and provide evidence of student work-based learning and career-connected learning activities. So it's very important that there's some mechanism to record those experiences. When we talk about work-based learning, as far as our presentations, we're looking at the main categories of job shadowing, internships, some clinical experience, pre-approved school-based enterprises, service learning, mentor programs, registered apprenticeships, cooperative education, and diversified occupations. When we look at the components of a high-quality work-based learning program, very often school districts will try to implement a program with perhaps not the right partnerships at the table. So you must have really a strong business community partnerships. Who are the people that you can bring in to support, the efforts of developing a career-connected learning program? School board support, student and staff buy-in. Both the students and the staff have to see the importance, the relevance of work-based learning programs. Good parent and guardian communication, if needed, a properly certified cooperative education teacher. And you must meet all legal and logistical issues. You have a good marketing and recruitment plan and means to evaluate your program. So let's talk about who benefits from work-based learning and take a look at partnership.
So my turn. So when we talk about business education partnerships, we take an approach that we call 360 ROI. In other words, for everyone around the table, everyone contributing to a partnership and everyone who gets some sort of return or an outcome from a partnership, you have to think about who is involved in that partnership. And that's your business partners, that's your educators, that's your students. It could be your parents, it could be your administrators, but everyone who is involved, everyone who contributes resources, everyone who signs off on a partnership has to see some sort of a benefit. So that's the 360 ROI mentality, and that's the approach we take. And so when you think about what people get out of partnerships, we'll spend a few minutes talking about what your business partners get out, what your students get out, and what your educators get out. And the business partner question, in terms of what they get out of partnerships, is a particularly interesting one, because a long time ago, back in the day, business partners didn't think a whole lot about what they got out of it. And something happened 35 years ago that really changed the way that businesses think about not only education partnerships, but also the work that they do with nonprofits and other organizations. And what happened was this campaign to restore the Statue of Liberty, and it's a wonderful story. So back in 1983, the Statue of Liberty, I believe, was put in place in about 1888. So almost 100 years of New York weather, 100 years almost of New York tourists. The statue had, sort of gone downhill a little bit. It was in sort of bad shape. And so at the time, Ronald Reagan was president. He went to Lee Iacocca, who was the chairman of car company Chrysler. And he said, Lee, I want you to form a citizens council to generate the funds to restore the Statue of Liberty. I don't want this to be a government-run initiative. I want this to be from the people. Will you take this on? And Lee Iacocca, of course, did. And his approach was primarily just to go to big businesses and ask for big checks. One of the businesses he went to was American Express, which today we think of American Express as one of the big three. It's Visa, MasterCard, American Express. In 1983, American Express was a small company. It was a niche card. It was the travel and tourism card. It was probably akin to Discover or Diners Club or something like that, a much smaller business. But they were the travel and tourism card. So Lee Iacocca went to American Express and he said, look, you guys are the travel and tourism company. This is the ultimate symbol of travel and tourism in America. We'd like $1 million. And American Express, again, a smaller company, said, well, that's a lot of money. Let us think about it. We'll get back to you. 2 weeks later, they got back with Lee Iacocca and they said, look, we don't have $1 million, but we do have 3 months of ad space booked, already committed. And so here's what we'll do. We'll run a campaign about this. We'll run an ad series about this campaign. And for every new card we issue, we'll give $1 to the campaign. For every transaction that takes place on the American Express card, we'll give you a penny. And so they ran this campaign, and after 3 months, they raised about $2.5 million for the Statue of Liberty restoration campaign, which is a huge win. I mean, they had asked for $1 million, they got 2.5, just from letting the public know about this effort. And what they found was that the consultants and the accountants went back and looked at business outcomes over that period. They saw huge benefits to the company as a result of that campaign. They saw that new card applications went through the roof. Transactions, which is their bread and butter, it's really how they make their money, increased dramatically. Brand image improved, trade relations. American Express, again, a smaller company, more expensive than the other cards. A lot of the higher-end hotels and restaurants wouldn't take it. They started to take it, so trade relations improved as a result of this campaign. Even employee morale increased. And so they realized that they saw tremendous benefits from doing this good thing. It's an idea called doing well by doing good. And if you've ever heard the phrase cause marketing campaign, that was the world's first cause marketing campaign. They didn't even know that that's what they were doing until they looked at it in hindsight. And so this idea of benefiting from doing good things spread like wildfire through the business community. And now there's a very established mentality among your business partners that, yes, I want to do good things. Yes, I want to work with schools. Yes, I want to work with students. I need to see some sort of an outcome for this investment because I don't have kinds of resources that I wish I could just spread around. My resources are valuable. I need to see a return. And so now there's a very firm idea of return on investment among your business partners. So the question is, how do your business partners benefit? Well, certainly they benefit from their exposure to the students. Students are future employees, they're future customers. When they do good things, there's a lot of visibility in the community. They get that sort of halo effect, that community goodwill. There's actually a lot of benefits in terms of HR. Now, if you're in career and technical education, usually when you talk to employers, you talk about the workforce pipeline. And certainly preparing the next generation of workers is a top draw. It's a top issue of interest for your employer partners. There can be a long turnaround getting students ready for employment. I mean, it could be working with a 10th grader, maybe they have to go through a post-secondary degree. It can be 4 or 5 years before that student is eligible to be employed. There are immediate benefits in terms of HR with their current employees. Employees who work with students have higher morale. They tend to stay with the company longer. It's easier to hire people because you've got that we give back sort of mentality. And there's a lot of individual outcomes for the business people who volunteer to work with your kids. And that can be just sort of the intrinsic reward of contributing, sharing your passion about your industry. For the people who sit on your advisory board or provide expertise, there's skill building, there's resume building. There's a lot of benefit. There's networking with other advisory board members, for example. So there's a lot of benefits for your business partners. Now, in terms of the student benefits, a lot of the data out there is broader in the sense that you'll find a lot of great outcomes data on career and technical education that doesn't necessarily isolate the business partnership piece of this, the employer engagement piece of this. But there is a growing body of data showing the value of employer engagement directly on students. In 2006, the Gates Foundation did a survey of people who had dropped out of high school. They said, well, what would have kept you in high school? And 81% of those dropouts said, if I had had some sort of a real world learning opportunity, if I had had an internship or worked with an employer, I might not have dropped out of high school. Nashville, Tennessee, they've got a model that's the College Career Academy sort of wall-to-wall model in all of their high schools, which is very strongly dependent on employer engagement. The Nashville police found that prior to putting this academy model in place, the average age of a gang member was 16. Now that the academies are in place, the average age of a gang member is 22, which means that those students are finding their peer group. They're finding a group that they identify with within these schools, which is a direct result of that employer engagement piece. KPMG, the consulting firm, did surveys and found that most educators said that working with employers boosts student attainment. And there was actually sort of a macro study from a group called Education Employers, which is a group in London. Ironically, using mostly U.S. data, they found that there are numerous benefits to employer engagement in terms of learning becomes more enjoyable and interesting. Students want to do better in school. They are better prepared to make career decisions. They did some longitudinal studies that showed that social mobility increased. So students who may be in a higher poverty environment were more likely to move into middle class, for example. And I think one thing that was really interesting to me is that future earnings by students increased by up to 18%. So they found that every meaningful interaction with an employer had the potential to boost future earnings by 4.5%. That's stacked up to 4 times. So if a student was thoroughly immersed with employer-involved learning, they could earn almost up to 20% more in the future. Finally, this to me is the question that is most often overlooked. A lot of times we tell educators you should do partnerships, it's for the kids. And educators hear it's for the kids all the time. And the reality of education is that most days are like trying to put 5 pounds of flour in a 3-pound bag. You don't have enough time to do all of the things you want to do. And if you don't see a direct outcome from employer partnerships, it's easy for that to be a nice to have and not a have to have. And so the good news is there are a lot of proven benefits from employer partnerships. Some of those relate to student outcomes. I mean, certainly we want to see students who develop a sense of grit and stick with education. They don't drop out. They're more engaged in learning, things like that. There are some benefits in terms of professional support. You want teachers to feel comfortable with the content that they're teaching, especially in a career and technical education environment. And certainly the idea of resources, whether those are funds or equipment or materials, you want to see that sort of support, and employer partnerships provide that. If you have that relationship, your employers are going to be much more likely to support the program in various ways. And so here we get back to this whole idea of 360 ROI. Everyone who contributes to a partnership should get some sort of a benefit from it. That includes your employer partners, it includes your students, it includes your teachers, your administrators, your parents, basically anyone who can say no to a partnership, or anybody who needs to put in resources or needs to play some sort of a role. You should think about what sort of benefit they get from that. And this mentality also helps with that idea of charity, because I think one of the reasons, and I've certainly heard this from talking to educators, one of the reasons it's hard to approach employers is it feels like begging, it feels like charity. And if you are providing value to your employer partners, as we've talked about here, this becomes a partnership of equals. You're contributing as much value as you're bringing in, and the same with your employer partners. This is a true relationship of equals. So if you think about return on investment, that is the key to building strong and sustainable partnerships going forward.
So we planned a series of 3 webcasts, all focusing around work-based learning. And so what you heard today was kind of an introduction to what it is, what work-based learning is and is not, and the importance of those relationships with business and industry partners, And as Brett mentioned just a few minutes ago, that buy-in from not only students but staff to really make this effective. So our next webcast, we will be looking at the 9 partnership models, where you will be introduced to 9 effective models to engage employers in work-based learning for students and staff. Because very often you hear employers say, we want to get into the schools, and schools say, we really would like businesses to come in, but it doesn't always happen because we really don't have established models, mechanisms, structures to allow that for effective partnerships. That will be our next webcast. We have very tremendous amount of resources for you that should help you on your journey. I'd like to point out some of the work-based learning toolkits, you know, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, and more that have really can give you a jump start on kind of the written end of it. You know, what would be the forms, what would be the format, kind of putting together a model of your own. Additional resources with employees having contact with children, your 339 plans, cooperative ed guidelines. And if you had any questions about the Future Ready Index, that certainly is the email address. And thank you.